you became a grandfather. That's a cool thing. And you're in grad
Yeah,
school. That's another intense and cool thing. But
yeah, it's crazy. Like my son got engaged. He's our youngest, so it's
right.
like it's quite the year of seasons and transitions. But yeah, I am in a introductory to clinical counseling as one of my classes, and
Okay.
so we had to pick something to advocate toward or for. And
Okay.
so all of these ideas were popping up on the screen for different students. And one of the students said, "Does anybody want to join me doing a project on therapeutic laughter?"
Hmm.
And I'm like, you know what? Why not? I mean, that's always my mode, anyways. I love laughter. I love
Okay.
utilizing it when I do pastoral counseling. I love using it when I preach. And so that started me on a bit of a journey where I had never heard of it, but just kind of something kind of hit me just in the heart. I'm like, this is something I think I would want to advocate toward and
Yeah.
for. And so the more I began to do research on it, I came to AATH, and that's where I started kind of the journey of jumping into that, started doing a little bit of interacting on their platform. And the more research that I began to do with it for our project, the more that I honestly have fallen in love with the aspect of therapeutic humor, the power of the smile,
Yeah.
what laughter can actually do for somebody's body, soul, spirit, everything in
Right.
between. It's pretty awesome. So our project is due in about I think a week and a half,
Okay.
and I think we're the first people presenting with it. But I don't know, especially after some of the conversations I've had like this, I'm pretty stoked about it.
Good.
Again,
Good.
it's an intro class. So we haven't been able to go as in depth I think that we would normally go, but nevertheless, I feel like we're going to wake up some people to something that they have never given some time or attention towards. Like my son-in-law, he's a grad student going for the same degree, but he's about a year and a half further than me.
All
So
right.
when I told him, hey, this is what we're going to advocate towards, he raises an eyebrow. He's like, that's what you're advocating for. And so after getting some data and some stuff, we're going to have a little bit more of a conversation to let them know that this is legit. This is something that
Yeah.
therapists should be advocating for.
So it sounds like your son-in-law was a little bit skeptical about what you're doing. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay. And it's
absolutely.
and yeah, that's pretty common in any setting, whether it be kind of a pastoral type setting or academic setting or medical setting, kind of skeptical about it. I presented some of my thinking on this to a contemporary of mine. I'm a retired pastor,
Mm.
and I retired 3 years ago. But one of the guys who retired about the same time as I did was one of the CEOs of IU Hospital, Indiana University Hospital, the big hospital complex here in Indiana, really through the whole state. It's based here in Indianapolis where I'm at, but they have outlets all this. Anyhow, my point is, I was doing I do a podcast about cancer and comedy because I have my own cancer journey, and then and I do a comedy a fundraiser for cancer, a comedy show fundraiser for cancer. Anyhow, I was running this idea by him, and I was trying to get into a little more insight into the local hospital scene and everything like that, how there might be some studies on that or work on that or whatever through the chaplaincy office or whatever. And long story
Mhm.
short, he ghosted me and I haven't heard from him since. And he and I were pretty good friends. He just thought I was an absolute nutcase, I think, about even bringing it up. So we had coffee one day and that was it. So, that reaction can be out there. In fact, I gave a talk at the conference earlier this year in May of this year at the AATH conference. A part of it was about a response to the skepticism in the professional world, kind of academics and medical and pastoral and things like that. That was part of the theme that I had of the talk I gave. So to go run into some of that, but yeah, there is a fair amount of research, as I'm sure you're finding out, and legit academic sound research on this. It's not just some people just making it up. There's and one of the things I think you'll find on AATH is they produce a kind of as a what are you going to say, a place, a landing place for a lot of this research to go and to be shared then. And one of the things I got involved with this past year is they have a 3-year program that basically it's to be a CHP is what you go for. They're a little designation, certified humor professional. But basically, it's a 3-year program where you get you do some sort of a project as a part of it. I'm in the first year of it, and you meet monthly online, and then once a year at the live event is kind of how they do it. So I'll have to decide if I want to, after this first year, if I want to continue on or not. But but I saw the presentations that they did, that the researchers did, and a lot of it was very academic, I'll say.
Mm.
Very rigorous academic with charts and graphs and you know testimonial type stories and things like that. And my point is, there are those people who want to blow it off, but there is legit research behind it, medical as well. So I think you're finding that out, right? Is that part of
Mhm.
what you're finding out?
Yeah, the whole Laugh MD app and everything that Laugh MD has been developing.
Yeah,
Um, that conversation we had about a week ago or so, and me kind of playing around a little bit with the app, which just was honestly amazing
yeah,
because like we've got data to back up what I think what we're very passionate about, the idea that laughter is the best medicine has actually some legitimately to it. So
hmm yeah.
yeah, I'm excited to talk about it.
Frank's an interesting guy, and he's got some. I was able to spend some time. I interviewed him on my podcast. If you get a chance, you might want to listen to that interview. He goes pretty much in depth what he's talking about. You sound like you had a personal conversation with him, and I had some good. Uh, he attended the talk I gave earlier this year, and he's really involved with AATH, and so he's a good resource there, as some of the other folks are as well. So good for you. Good for you.
Yeah, I'm hoping as grad school develops, like this is one of those things that started off as a project that has now kind of gotten down within my soul because I think of how I don't know. I just talking with my son the other day because he's starting premarital counseling. He doesn't want dad to do premarital counseling, and I get it. But I told him there's some things that I do in that first initial session to get them laughing, to get them watching their shoulders drop in terms of it's tense. I'm meeting with the pastor. What's he going to say about marriage? All of a sudden, watching their body language change,
Yeah,
watching things land a little bit deeper because the guard isn't down any longer. All the way to the place when I do hospital calls and such. I
yeah,
love bringing laughter in,
yeah.
helping to breathe that fresh air into their lungs. So
Well, you probably
I'm excited
notice.
about that.
I'm sure you probably make it a part of your speaking and your messages. I would think as well. And those a lot of times those are the messages that people remember when you made them laugh.
Yes.
I would often in my preaching days would often frame my messages with some sort of a dumb dad joke or something like that at the beginning, and then try to interlace humor in the stories I told, whether they were real life stories or something I read somewhere. And those would be the memorable. A lot of times, the people would remember those. Storytelling overall isn't impactful, of course, parables and so on. But if you can interlace humor in it, that's the ones that people remember. That's at least my experience. And it also breaks down some of that, as you mentioned, some of that barriers, that kind of stuff. And I agree with you. Hospital
Yep.
calls, counseling situations, if you can break it up a little bit with putting a smile on somebody's face or sharing a laugh together, that helps. It just helps. It's not,
It does.
they say, the way I like to look at it, you hear that phrase. I know Frank uses a lot. Laughter is the best medicine. Why don't we use it? Well, I see it more as an integrated thing and part of you need real medicine or real legit medicine. But I know in my own cancer journey, my own doc and I and others I worked with all use that as a way of building rapport and trust that comes into play. And I think that's a part of what we talk about, and I think you can build trust through humor. I think that helps a lot too. I'll give you an example where it's not necessarily humorous. My cancer doctor, he and I, if he'll probably be a guest eventually on my podcast, but he's anxious about it. But we were able to joke around a little bit uh, about kids. When you have prostate cancer, like I have, the kids are no longer in the
Mhm.
offering. Not that they would be when you're 67, but he's just had children. Literally had two children, and he's a young guy, and he's had two children in the 3 years I've been being treated by him. And so we kid around about that, how you can have kids and I can't and whatnot and that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But my other doc, my main doc, we don't joke around so much, but we're able to talk about the Indiana Pacers because he's the Indiana Pacers team. He's the team doctor for Indiana Pacers, besides being my doctor, and they had a great year this year. And so we always break down the barriers by talking about the latest Pacer stuff and who's hurt and who's not and that kind of stuff. But anything you can do to break down barriers, I think helps. Is kind of what I'm getting at, whether it's laughter or rapport or something like that. Do you agree?
Oh, 100%. From because I do a lot of marriage counseling. Marriage is my thing. I do a lot of traveling and speaking on marriage, and I've learned that when most of the time people get drugged to a marriage conference, like one spouse gets drugged there, or to marriage counseling, or if I'm preaching on really deep stuff or heavy stuff on a Sunday morning, humor it almost gives space in the lungs to breathe because everyone is
Right.
so tense, they're apprehensive, and half the time that just getting them to laugh just kind of gives room for them to now breathe in what needs to be talked about, and they'll remember the stories, but then they'll now connect it rather than just I'm going to church. They've experienced church because that kind of gave them that interaction. They didn't just go to counseling; they experienced counseling, and that laughter is just—it's a key.
Yeah.
People get on me all the time about why do you bring up sports so much in church, and I tell them I can line up the amount of guys that have been drugged in church by their wife, telling them that you need to hear the pastor, and their mindset is the pastor is one way. It's going to talk about stuff I'm not interested in, to the point where he's into the same stuff that I'm into. But
Right.
oh, I get what he's talking about. And so to me, laughter, the levity, it becomes a shoehorn, man. It gives
Yeah.
us the ability to be able to speak deeper stuff.
So I think if you could speak to some of those things that are on the periphery of things, like what I mean by that is just if you talk about uh, sports with guys or music, if you can talk about music, or if you could talk
Mm.
even about like I'm an old rock and roll disc jockey, so if you can talk a little bit, like classic rock, talk about the Eagles or Queen or something like that, you can hit certain people where they're at. Or if you talk about their kids or their grandchildren, the other. What do you find ways to build rapport, and you can, or of course, you can break humor into all those type of things.
Mm-hmm.
Like if your team sucks, like the Colts and the Lions have both sucked in not too many recent years, and then you can talk about that, or you can talk about them doing good and and that kind of stuff, as well as other things with women and with families. Sometimes you can talk about children or kids or marriage and that kind of stuff in a humorous light, like your own.
Yeah.
You can talk about your own uh, marriage or your spouse, not in a. I don't like to use derogatory humor, but but the humorous situations, that kind of thing, and that can break down some barriers as well. So I think that's good. That's just good communication as well. Just
Yeah, yeah. It develops what I would just simply call relational equity, whether it's from
yeah,
a pulpit or sitting in counseling chambers. Those connection points, and especially with things that make people laugh, it's just relational equity. The more that you build up, the more you get to spend on the deeper stuff. So I love utilizing humor. I don't mind being a funny pastor, or when I travel. That's one thing my wife will tell me. She's like, whenever we travel, like we're always going to carry good material. She says we need to make sure that we make people laugh. It's the relational equity thing. And so like our first sessions in our conferences, we get people laughing like crazy, and the rest of the conference they're completely wide open. You built this connection that simply says you're safe, you're
yeah.
fun, you're safe, and I feel like we've got this thing here, and now we can really deal with the deep stuff.
By conference, do you mean like one session, or do you mean like a weekend retreat sort of a thing, or whatever?
A whole weekend, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
you do that type of. Is that what you're working on your master's? Are you working your master's, your doctorate? What are you working on there?
Master's in clinical counseling. Like I have I've never had a counseling class in my life. Even in
Okay.
Bible college, I didn't have a single counseling class. It's one of those things that has become so natural to me, to the point where I train pastors to utilize like prepare and enrich to help them with marriage counseling, pre-marriage counseling. I'm trained in Symbis as well, and I can train people to do that. It has become just a very natural thing. Marriage and family. It's I don't know how it started, other than my favorite professor talked about marriage and family a lot, but working with youth and kids, I've learned that if it would make my job easier if I could pour it into parents to help them be better parents and have better marriages for their kids to watch. And so I started switching a lot of my focus as a youth and kids pastor into pouring into parents to help them be better. And that when I came here and became the lead pastor of an entire church, um, my wife and I just said, this is something that we need to really be the focus of what our church does. So now our church is known as like the marriage church.
Okay.
I do a whole series every June. And then periodically, like we will do stuff around the state, or we just came back from Montana a couple weeks ago. We did a marriage conference out there for a large church. So we do
Okay.
quite a bit of travel, but I do have a marriage podcast.
Oh, do you
I've
really?
written a
Okay.
marriage, yeah.
Okay.
So I've done
Good.
a marriage book, and so yeah, I love talking about it. And so to me, I wanted something to help me be a better equiper for marriages. And on top of that, when I think about retirement, whether it's mid late 60s, whatever it is, that's what I think what I want to do when I'm ready to retire from pastoring is actually to go into counseling. And that's my
Okay.
son-in-law wants to have his own counseling firm at some point. And I just told him, I said, Josh, I'm just going to work for you in my retirement and
There
still
you
be
go.
effective. So
There
yeah,
you
he's a
go.
good dude.
Well, good for you. Well, I'm glad you got some good stuff going on there, and you got some good plans together, and humor is a part of it. And it
Yeah.
sounds like you've got a counseling methodology. It sounds like your own process
Mhm.
there in that. And do you ever work with people who have debilitating health situations or anything along that line as well as your marriage and counseling?
Oh, when you deal with marriage, I always tell my staff, you can never say the words "I've heard it all," and walk through things from like I've got a couple for which she has MS and navigating marriage from that aspect. I've dealt with depression most of my life. My last
Hmm.
book was about my journey through depression. And so because of my background with marriage as well as dealing with depression, I do get lots of marriages that come in that have clinical depression to what I would say is some lighter depression and some emotional stuff. But that's opened the door for a lot of different marriage issues, which I get the honor of sitting and walking couples through some of those things.
Yeah. I mean, part of what I'm getting at, it sounds like you might be a good candidate for our podcast. I take the track of it's called Cancer and Comedy because myself and my co-host both are cancer survivors. I'm prostate and she's a breast cancer survivor.
Mm,
But we use that not only directly in terms of how my very short version of my very long story is when I was diagnosed with cancer a few years ago. It was right after Christmas, and my first reaction was to laugh to keep from crying, and that kind of took me down a
mm,
road of exploring even deeper. I knew about therapeutic humor a little bit even before that from my previous
mm.
studies and using it in ministry, but I took off on that road, went down that road that led me eventually to AATH, and now I'm a member of that organization and spoke at their conference this year, and I hope to speak at their one in San Diego next year, or next year. We'll see about that. But and writing a book about my experiences healing with hope and humor, and about my own cancer deal. But anyhow, I use cancer not only as the direct thing, but also as a metaphor for anything that eats you alive.
Mm,
Like depression, divorce, uh,
yeah.
debt, financial issues, anything along those lines. And then the comedy is not only about ha ha comedy, because I do actually, uh, Deb and I, my co host, we do actually speak to actual comedians and other folks like that who do it. And I've done a little stand up myself,
Mm,
that kind of thing, and learned from people like Frank and that kind of thing. But we also use comedy as a metaphor for whatever you can do to help to lighten the load. To It's basically it has to do with mindset, your mindset
hmm.
and that kind of thing. And so it sounds like you might be, if you would be willing to, sound like if you have a process there to help people deal with things, it sounds like you might be a good candidate to be on our podcast. Would that be of interest to you to be on it sometime?
That stuff to me is a blast. I love doing podcasts. I love talking with people through stuff, especially when you hit something that you're passionate about.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, sometimes you just can't get me to shut up about it. So I love doing podcasts.
Well, the main thing I'm looking for then is somebody who has kind of your situation to tell about your particular situation and how you help people. And some, I like to have some in how you help people, whatever process you use to be helpful to people. And then uh, I always like to hear a story, like a good news
Mm.
story or a story about how somebody's going to come through your process and has benefited from it. Do you think you have that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think I've got plenty of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, all these years of working in ministry and people coming through the office, and especially once you start getting into things more than just, hey, we're having problems in our marriage, to I'm married to a depressed person. How do I navigate? How do we navigate this? And that's one of those things when you talk to a couple and we'll work through what my wife and I've had to work through, because she's been married to a depressed person for years, and until she hit 40, she went through her own bout. Like, it was the year she was turning 40, daughter was graduating, son was going into high school. It felt more empty nest than it's ever felt, and all of a sudden it triggered something within her, and all of a sudden she began to realize it went from, I'm married to a depressed person, like, we have depression in our home, and she never saw the we thing until
Yeah.
that moment. That's what I talk to a lot of marriages about. It's not he deals with it, it's we are dealing with it. And that's where we began everybody at, is this is something that is a marriage issue, not him. It's a marriage issue.
And of course, depression is a huge thing. And for those people who
Mm.
deal with cancer and other debilitating illnesses as well. In fact,
Yes, yes.
part of what our big mission is to help people deal with loneliness and all the stuff surrounding that. We're going to do we got a input on our podcast just the other day, a woman who says, I'm former military and I've got stage 4 cancer, but I don't have anybody in my life. I don't even have a caretaker.
Mm.
So I'm all alone in this. And so we're going to do a episode about that, but it sounds like the episode with you might be really focusing on depression as a factor in everything that people deal with and how you can approach it. We're about coping with hope and humor is kind of our
Mm.
tagline.
Yeah.
Cope with hope and humor. And so it's not just humor. It's not just laughing only. I've talked to people who actually laugh therapists, not necessarily humor therapists, but laugh
Mm.
therapists, where they actually, you'll learn more about this. People who physically have people go through seminars about they physically laugh in various ways in order to uh, change their change their mode. They're a laugh therapist, and they're a humorist, and then they're comedians, and there's different kind of niches in this as I've learned about as well. And so part of what Deb and I do is we kind of also kind of dissect and take apart some of the comedians are out there and kind of how they are, what they do. For instance, my wife and I went. My wife's name is Debbie as well. My co-host is Deb, and we went to see Steve Martin and Martin Short just this past weekend, and
Oh, nice.
so where we're going to build a episode around that experience, so basically about long-term friendships and the ups and downs of that, about how they play up on that in their comedy show, about how
Mm.
that's important there. So get the idea there. Well, let me just say a couple things to you in terms of what I do. If way I do this, David, is after our conversation here, I'll think about and pray about it and send you an invite
Mm.
if I feel like it's a match, which I'm sure it will be. You think about and pray about it. If you want to do it, then you just accept that invite, and there's a scheduling thing on there, like you did for this, and we just
Okay.
schedule a time, and we do that. I also have a onboarding document that I need for you to fill out, that kind of stuff, and that's a release form and things like that. And then the only ground rules basically are for the podcast when I do them are that it's all about serving it's about serving my audience and your
Mhm.
audience more than it is about serving me or you.
Yeah.
It's about that's the biggest thing. So, for instance, I want you to talk about your book or anything else you got, but it's not going to be one long commercial for your book or whatever you got. Did you get the
That's
idea of
right.
that?
That's
And
right.
then, second thing is, it is the intellectual rights are mine. They're not yours. I'm not going to send the recording back to you to edit or anything like that. It's my stuff. I do run. I also have a clean podcast, so just keep it clean, that kind of stuff, and that's mainly it. And then I just ask you to. Once the recordings are done and go out into the world, I ask you to share it in your world, that kind of thing, your network and that kind of thing. So you think you could be agreeable to kind of those ground rules that I have here?
As long as we don't do the podcast during a Lions game, it will be as clean as it can be. So,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I was when the Colts were dropping a big turd on the Steelers the other day. I was not happy at all, and then I've been not when the Pacers were in the finals this year. That was a toughie when they got knocked out at the end there. That was a tough too. So yeah.
yeah, they played well though.
Oh yeah, it was great, but having our main guy get hurt in the last game when they were ahead and everything, gosh,
Yeah,
that
that's terrible.
tore my heart out. And I'll be anxious. Actually, I'll be talking to my doc, who's the big pacer guy, in a couple of weeks here. I'll be anxious. I haven't talked to him since the finals. See what he had to say about that, because he's very involved with that whole medical process with those guys. So yeah,
Wow.
whatever. So we'll see about that. Well, it's a pleasure to get to know you. I hope that you'll, avail yourself to the resources, AATH. I think there's a lot of good stuff there. Their big conference is in San Diego this year. I'm not sure if I'm going to make it or not because of the travel situation going all the way out there. Because my wife and I usually go out to, we have a son who lives in Oregon, and so we usually go out
Mm.
there about that time of year. Well, not that time of year. We usually go out to Oregon, and we don't know we can swing 2 West Coast trips in the same year or not. But anyhow, but if you can, that's a good experience. I'm going to share that with you. That is a good experience. There's a couple hundred people go to that event, and you find interesting people. Like for you talk about interesting people who have a like-mindedness. I found myself having dinner with a couple from Japan who came, who have a very interesting mission or ministry, uh, to not a ministry as such, but certainly a mission to
Hmm.
folks in Japan who there is this phenomenon as people grow older, they feel like they are no longer worthwhile to society and they go and kill themselves and things like this. And, or they go off and it's a kind of a problem, which I wasn't aware of. But yeah, they kind of have a mission to offer value to people who are aging in Japan, which I found very interesting.
Wow.
And humor is a part of that. Those people were sitting on one side of me at the one dinner, and the other guy next to me was the president of a college outside of London, England, and who's making that a whole humor thing as a part of their curriculum of their college in suburban London,
Wow.
and people from all over the states and that kind of stuff. It's not a huge conference. I'm gonna say about 200 people were there, the
Mm.
one I went to, but interesting stuff and good value for what you do. So that's what I would share with you about that. You may or may not want to get interested in this certified humor professional thing I'm about because that kind of puts you on a track that's a really academic track and that kind of thing. But the person who runs that, she is a PhD in psychology, and she does a she kind of makes you work a little bit at it, which is
Mm.
okay. She kind of you have homework and all that kind of stuff, and we might meet once a month on that. So keep that in mind. I also wanted
Oh,
to
cool.
offer you. I also wanted to offer you something else here that you may or may. I do several things. I'm a in my retirement. I'm kind of a more or less a full time podcaster. I edit for people, and I do a daily Bible podcast, and I do this once a week a cancer related one, and then I also do events. And so I do. I want to offer you a kind of a free pass to the event I'm doing this Saturday. I do a AI for content creators. It's a full day or half a day where I bring in a professor of AI who's going to talk about how to use AI to your content creation, including how to use it for book writing and things like this. Since you're an
Oh, nice.
author, author about that. I'll send you a link to it. If you want to, certainly if you want to come down to Indy Saturday, you're welcome to. It's a live event, but we're also live streaming it, and I want to send you the link to the live stream if you want to check it out.
Very cool.
You
Very
you
cool. No, thank you so much.
you can do that. So, all right. Do you have any other questions of me, my friend, for what we're working on here?
Not at all. This has been awesome. Thanks for entertaining me and tolerating me for a little bit. And
Uh-huh.
yeah, if you want to hook up with podcasting, let me know.
Well, I'm sure I will. I just review the tape here is what I do, what we just did, and then think about it, pray about it, and send you a link, and we just take it from there. All right.
Very cool.
Oh, all right. Take care, man. Blessings on you.
Take care.
All right, man. Take it easy.